black person in a courtroom divided by racism. The youngster gets up and tells the judge, "You're my dad," and his little voice is shaking, but obstinate in a crowded Memphis courtroom with a lot of tension in. The room's air is thick with the unspoken accounts of discrimination and loss. Each and every one of the grim faces of authorities to the silent spectators, and the scene is corrected in the gallery. Taking place in front of them, DeAndre Carter No. Above the age of 12 and wearing an large sweatshirt and scuffed, holds onto his table's edge as he finds the strength to express his dark eyes widened in terror and resolve look through the intimidating. The man sitting on the bench is a well-known Marcus Ellis, a judge whose reputation for being steadfastly tough with troublesome. He has long been seen as a symbol of youth authority in this split. Ellis, a community judge who is in his early 50s with a manner and graying temples, both imposing and surprisingly tender, flipping through his hard exterior. The case file that includes practiced precision is renowned for his unwavering decisions. He has gained notoriety in Memphis for imposing severe sanctions on those who break the law, in particular young people trapped in the crossfire between systemic, as the youngster stated, injustice still exists today. Echo through the quiet courtroom. He feels an uncomfortable tremor, combination of incredulity and an excruciating memory of a time in the past when he had attempted to bury. The middle-aged prosecutor has a clipped tone and a receding hairline, had been carefully laying out the charges of loitering and trespassing that was done by DeAndre in a gated, wealthy neighborhood outside of the city. The homeowners contacted law enforcement. Characterization of a dark person in a. All these details about a neglected neighborhood were read out in a monotone which hardly concealed his own prejudice, yet suddenly everything, the well-practiced phrases, falter under DeAndre's influence. Ripple echoes of revelation through the courtroom while the youngster recites his shocking statement, his voice becoming steadier with each. "You've been my dad for a long time." Judge Ellis's gaze stays locked for a minute on the quivering form in front of him. The way that stern authority is expressed changes, exposing himself so completely that even he struggles to hide the judge's thoughts, which return to A. At that moment he felt alone and afraid. A small-town adolescent felt compelled to a choice that would follow him around for decades. At the age of 18, he had been overtaken by the embarrassment of an unplanned pregnancy. The burden of societal expectations clouds the future. Anticipations and the severe assessments of his parents and people around him made a decision, had forced him to, in order to protect his future, surrender his infant kid while reassuring him that both of their lives would be better if he never experienced the agony of carrying a burden he could not. In the middle of that turbulent mistake, while following the guidelines to keep him safe from additional difficulty, he had resigned his lone child without ever contemplating that today would. Why the courtroom appears to be getting smaller as Judge Ellis is having trouble regaining his calm. His gavel, which was formerly an instrument of order and finality, feels like a mooring now, binding him to a history he cannot. Don't run away or face the public head-on. Protect her with eyes that show sympathy and helplessness. Bends in DeAndre's direction as though to reassure in a whisper, but the boy's focus is still unwavering, focused on the individual who was formerly a stranger, despite now claiming a portion of him, followed by a brief silence, with such force that the sterile becomes, turning the courtroom into a platform for an unspoken. Ellis, the drama judge, clears his throat and whose tone fluctuates between duty, because confessing tells us to take a brief. He speaks in a controlled tone, but his hands' tremors reveal his inner agitation as he leaves the bench. The whispers surge into a wave of scandal reporters and incredulity in the back scrawl frantically, aware that the case recently went beyond the legal limits to discuss really personal truths from his peaceful solitude. Ellis paces. A chamber's judge is the narrow limitations of his workspace, the immaculate walls encircling him like the memories. For a long time, Tread has attempted to forget. He locks himself for a brief period of reflection, his thoughts reliving when the crucial choice was made. A faded picture concealed in a drawer for years all of a sudden seems so heavy, in his heart, in the picture of a baby gazing while wrapped in a faded blue blanket, simply looking up into a child's eyes, had potential in the past and whose future he had made a sacrifice in order to
expediency and anxiety. The image is, his secret is a holdover from a time he never daring to challenge, and it now poses a threat to destroy everything he has constructed outside. Through the busy court hallways, whispers of astonishment and scandal in the house spread like a wildfire among the already ordered. The courtroom is now a boiling pot of mixed feelings of wrath, sorrow, hope, and conflict, and a tangible desire for. DeAndre remains seated at the reconciliation. The defendant's table seems smaller. More than ever, his stance drooping beneath the heavy burden of a reality his eyes were carried alone for too long. Tear-red but blazing with an intensity that is surprising for his age, shows a lifetime of disappointment from those intended to shield him for the rest of his life.
Moving from foster family to foster home, each one a temporary refuge from a world that seems intent on throwing him a gentle rap on the hefty wooden door interrupts the internal conflict of the judge. Carmen Rivera is an experienced social worker with a solid hand and gentle gaze, whose function in DeAndre's the turbulent journey has been as important as, because Carmen has shown compassion. Quietly enters, her voice hard but gentle. Judge Ellis asks if she can let me in, tone that is both concerned and providing Carmen with a sense of urgency, who has personally witnessed the wounds caused by. Currently, a fragmented system is not only a disturbance of court proceedings. Lives come together at a crossroads, looking for. Judge Ellis is still holding the healing. The worn photo pauses, then nods. The presence of Carmen serves as a reminder of both empathy and responsibility. Provide a, in the middle of his weak lifeline, internal storm that we must consider. She whispers, "What's best for the boy?" She meets his gaze with calm eyes. Deserves to be informed even if it destroys everything you believe to be yours. Constructed her remarks using measured pierce through the denialism layers that have keeping him sequestered. It's a reminder to tackle not only the current situation but the more profound scars of a history that refuses to remain buried while the recess deepens. The courthouse's hallways are packed with whispered conjecture, and nervous looks at the courtroom drama news starts to permeate past the bulky oak doorways accessing nearby communities. And in a city that has long been split along racial lines, history's unfolding events are as compelling as a moving reflection on the individual. The price paid by systematic unfairness outside in a small neighborhood that is far from the gleaming exterior of the wealthy gated neighborhood where the alleged trespass occurred. Life continues on its normal course. Challenges, however, the case becomes a metaphor for many. Reminder that beyond the surface of personal histories and societal order are still present, filled with regrets and unhealed wounds. Judge, after what feels like an eternity, Ellis goes back to the courtroom bench. A.B. Buzz is now buzzing with anticipation. His eyes are silent when he sits down, despite being weighed down by his. There is a gleam of resolve in the past now, voice that falters but becomes more steady. He speaks to the group with every word.
The purpose of this court is to handle legal issues, but I've come to understand that there is something far deeper at risk here. Statements made with authority and sensitivity exit the space in a. DeAndre's heart thuds in the charged silence. While he waits, hope is mixed with the public defender's reliance on uncertainty, speculating that this might be when the truth eventually comes to light, the prosecutor temporarily adjusts after being at a loss. His documents as though anticipating that the written word could offer the clarification that one cannot speak at that moment. Separate justice from personal revelation becomes hazy, and the strict boundaries of the courtroom turns into an area between redemption and human frailty. Cross without additional ceremony. Judge Ellis summons DeAndre to come to the boy's petite figure rises on the bench, shakily, and everyone's eyes are on him, standing in front of the man whose presence has both frightened and confounded him during the actions with the same shuddering, the bravery that had led him to this. As soon as DeAndre's voice returns, more obvious now, "You let me know when I was a baby's." Words are powerful and linger in the air. Years of desertion and unresolved inquiries. The judge's eyes enlarge in shock and a prolonged period of agony. The courtroom is not moved by either guy. Once the legal formality stage now changes into a space for a very intimate. Judge Ellis's mind whirl when he realizes, as he recalls the discussion he had years ago with a young man in need, the point at which he had to make a decision. between his previous life and the potential for a future characterized by overpowering responsibility. He remembers the heartbreaking his parents' guarantees that raising his child was the sole means of ensuring assurances of a better life that had reverberated through his own heart's passageways. Ever considering the embodiment both now and in the past, he discovers the long-suppressed truth, found himself on the brink of change. In a barely audible voice he admits that I was so young that I was afraid that if I stayed away, it would safeguard us both. Raw and unrestrained admission sends a emotional reverberation in the courtroom. Tears sparkle in DeAndre's eyes as a blend of rage and hesitant optimism. Perhaps there could just be a way toward recovery. You never returned. The young man whispers, his voice breaking with I spent my life with the burden of years lost.
And evaluate Ellis during the quiet times of reflection discovers that redemption is not present within the antiseptic environment of court decisions but in the convoluted, unexpected human realm. Relationship throughout their meetings reduced the level of stress and enhanced by the hesitant warmth of Ellis, a judge of reconciliation whose public persona has previously been used interchangeably with the uncompromising authority now permits himself to moments of susceptibility in the presence of DeAndre. He goes to neighborhood gatherings, talks with advocates in the area, and even starts collaborating with counselors to know how to move through the complexity of their recently. DeAndre's connection on his part progressively reveals the agony of being moving from foster home to foster home, the haunting feeling of abandonment and the intense desire for a relationship that went beyond the institutional. He had long been aware of the neglect. The change occurs gradually and imperfectly. A number of minor but important actions toward re-establishing a connection that had previously seemed irreparably shattered in silence. Discussions under the dappled Memphis afternoon. Judge in the sun. DeAndre and Ellis investigate the potential to redefine there are no grand announcements or immediate resolves that are only steady at moments. The difficult process of developing trust. The judge acknowledges once more that each day, since that tragic revelation in the courtroom, has proven difficult to reconcile his past and now, but he promises that he will not allow fear to stop him from pushing forward. Their lives are dictated by regret, and DeAndre, whose life was characterized by a string of excruciating disappointments, starts to realize that pardoning someone is not an indication of weakness but an essential action, ultimately leading to healing. In the courtroom had formerly reverberated with the din of judicial disputes and hushed rulings, turns into a dim recollection in a space where the real conflict was not one of law, vindication, but for the sake of recovering a Judge Marcus Ellis's lost bond and DeAndre Carter. There is yet hope, uncertain and full with obstacles. Nonetheless, everyone agrees that, despite the scars, this fresh chapter is also full with the potential for recuperating. As they leave the courthouse next to the city's Memphis appears, if only briefly, to held its breath, waiting to see what may occur in the future when even the darkest wounds can eventually heal and tenderness starts to heal.
Awaiting. You move ahead at that very instant. K.M.N. Her presence served as a soothing influence amid the whirlwind of feelings. She carefully sets her eyes and a hand on DeAndre's shoulder, delivering the implicit message that, even though it hurts, the first step is to be honest. In the direction of reconciliation, the judge's confession that was given in slow tones and trembling breaths are greeted by a profound quiet, a quiet that communicates louder than any official statement could. In that quiet, the broken fragments of the history of a family starts to uncover the speculative future contours that neither had ventured to think. Judge Ellis's subsequent remarks are filled with regret and a determination to repair the irreparable. I've let you down, and he declares in a voice that he cannot change the past, becoming more resolute as he goes on. Yet I wish to support you right now if you'll give me an opportunity to create changes. His declaration, he receives a gentle pause as the courtroom, used to stiff with anticipation, becomes softer with DeAndre's gentle, sympathetic eyes. Once enduring the anguish of abandonment, flickers with doubt and the sluggish, hesitant glimmer of pardon as when the session is over, the judge lifts his gavel one last time, but not as a sign of power but as a request to start a fresh, pledge that the way to, despite the challenges, healing is During the recess they will walk together. Is finished and the case that was caught. Beyond and I are now paying attention to. Permanently changed into a personal road of redemption and reckoning. The city is bustling outside the courtroom, with conjecture and rumor still pending. DeAndre Carter and Judge Marcus Ellis. The world has shrunk to just one unpleasant reality of the past with all of its scars. Require recognition if there is to feel hopeful about the future in the weeks and days after their interactions are still hesitant and unpolished. Judge Ellis was formerly shielded by the inflexible demands of his workplace. He finds himself attracted to the fragile and unpredictable. He organizes a dance of human connection, gatherings at a peaceful park in a modest environment. A locals bench beneath expansive oak trees. The youth center was bustling with the activity of teenage energy centers where DeAndre feels secure enough to down his defenses. During these sessions, the protocol of the courtroom fades away and honest takes its place. Discussions that veer between blunders and discoveries. DeAndre describes the isolation of being raised in a system that appeared, despite his hardship, the numerous evenings spent wondering about his value and the fervent want that one day people would see and love him for who he is. In turn, Judge Ellis confesses that he really is the agonizing pieces of his own past, a history shaped by decisions. Moments of remorse that occur under pressure have plagued him in the long, slow procedure for recognizing the repercussions of his previous choices. Sometimes the wounds appear excessively intense when grief and rage, danger of overpowering the fragile bond developing between them throughout these times. Silence speaks louder than words, a glance shared, a discreetly removed tear or the soft, a hand squeeze serves as the language, which both express the incomprehensible despite DeAndre's difficulties. With sentiments of treachery and abandon, he starts to see the potential for forgiveness not as an forgiveness of transgressions but as a means to proceed to recover the portions of that which had been lost to resentment was himself.